one of the greatest military operations in history.
که رژیم صهیونیستی اشتباه بزرگی کرد. عواقب او رو بیچاره خواهد کرد.
In the past 24 hours, we've taken out top military commanders, senior nuclear scientists, the Islamic regime's most significant enrichment facility, and a large portion of its ballistic missile arsenal. More is on the way.
زندگی برای اونها تلخ خواهد شد بدون تردید. فکر نکنند که زدند و تمام شد. نه، ما به اونها اجازه نخواهیم داد که از این جنایت بزرگی که انجام دادند خودشون رو سالم خلاص کنند.
The regime doesn't know what hit them. They don't know what will hit them.
Israel strikes Iran's nuclear sites and kills its top generals. Iran vows severe retaliation. Israel launched blistering attacks on the heart of Iran's nuclear and military structure Friday, deploying warplanes and drones previously smuggled into the country to attack key facilities and kill top generals and scientists. Barrage, it said, was necessary before its adversary got any closer to building an atomic weapon. The ongoing military and intelligence operation raised the potential for all-out war between the countries and propelled the region, already on edge, into even greater upheaval. Iran quickly retaliated by sending a swarm of drones at Israel, and Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned of severe punishment. Iran had been censured by the UN's atomic watchdog a day earlier for not complying with obligations meant to prevent it from developing a nuclear weapon. Israel had long threatened such a strike, and successive American administrations had sought to prevent it, fearing it would ignite a wider conflict across the Middle East and possibly be ineffective at destroying Iran's dispersed and hardened nuclear program. So, Israel has just launched an attack on Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure, killing top generals, scientists, and striking deep into what many consider the heart of Persia, or modern-day Iran. In response, Iran has not only unleashed swarms of drones, but has now followed through with a massive counterstrike. Over 150 ballistic missiles and more than 100 drones were launched at Israel cities in a retaliatory campaign dubbed Operation True Promise 3. So now, they have air raid sirens across Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and as the Iron Dome and Allied air defenses try to intercept the incoming attack. While most were intercepted, some slipped through, causing injuries, damage, and now there is a renewed sense of vulnerability in the Israel population. This is an escalation from threats that, of course, opened up military conflict. Now, Ayatollah Khamenei vowed that Iran's response would not stop here, declaring that the final outcome will be decided by Iran's hand. But there might be more to this. Could it be a prophecy unfolding before our very eyes? And maybe this isn't the time to worry. The time to watch out for is the day peace and security is announced. Then, as soon as everyone has their backs turned, that will be the beginning of the next world war.
I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, so
pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors. We're the producers. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
This is Mossad's old office. Its motto from Proverbs 24:6 says in so many words, wage war through deception and trickery.
And Stuxnet is believed to be a joint US-Israeli creation, developed to wreak havoc on Iran's nuclear program by their respective intelligence agencies, the CIA and Mossad. But what happened in 2010 is a small aspect of the silent war between Israel and Iran, which was once relegated to the shadows. Today, it is undisguisedly out in the open. Israel says that Iran's nuclear weapons program has advanced to the point of existential threat. But for more than a decade now, the country has been threatened by it. In 2018, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel obtained tens of thousands of pages of data. It showed that Iran covered up its nuclear program before signing a deal with world powers in 2015. According to an ex-Mossad chief, this information was obtained by non-Israeli agents from safes in Tehran. In 2020, a series of mysterious attacks erupted. In July, an explosion tore apart a centrifuge plant at the Natanz nuclear enrichment facility. Tehran blamed the attack on Israel.
This one also took years of planning. Mossad released this footage earlier this morning of the Operation Rising Lion between the IDF and Mossad, which began at 3 a.m. local time, although preparation began long before. The mission included Mossad smuggling vehicles and drones into Iran, setting up a drone base in Iran, and activating the drones this morning to hit Iran's surface-to-air missiles. At the same time, the IDF deployed 200 aircraft. These were mainly fighter jets to hit roughly 100 targets in Iran. All of this aimed at hitting the heart of Iran's nuclear program. Today, the Israeli military says it also destroyed dozens of radar installations. Multiple explosions were heard at Iran's Natanz nuclear power facility. This is Iran's main enrichment facility. Now, back and forth today between how much has actually been hit and the level of damage there. Iran claims that it's still standing, but Israel says it has been severely damaged.
We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program.
Most likely and the most dangerous scenario is Iran and Israel right now. So obviously the Israelis are on high alert. They just had this terrorist attack. They're dealing with Hamas. You know, what if in North Israel, a bunch of Iranian-backed militias start killing thousands of Israeli civilians? Okay, so the Israelis invade, do the Iranians counterattack, and now you have Israel, Iran in a regional conflict. The Turks probably have to get involved. The Saudi Arabians probably have to get involved. And then that is the sort of thing that could balloon into World War III. And then the final thing, man, is you know, China wants Taiwan, right? Everything that we have tells us the Chinese want Taiwan. America, I think, has left Taiwan in a really crappy position because we've sent all of our weapons to Ukraine. The Taiwanese, I don't know that they could repel a Chinese invasion right now. And so do the Chinese invade Taiwan? That leads to some sort of accelerating conflict there. So there are basically at least 3 hotspots in the world right now that each have the potential to become a major worldwide conflict. It's really scary.
Iran began firing more missiles into Israel moments ago. Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst is live from Tel Aviv with more on that. Trey.
Yeah, John, we have some video captured by our cameraman, Yaniv Turgeman. Off in the skyline, we could see these incoming ballistic missiles. They appeared as if they were headed toward the port city of Haifa in northern Israel. The entirety of the country has gotten an alert to head into bomb shelters. This is still an ongoing event, but you can see this video here just captured by Fox News as these missiles were streaming through the skies of Israel.
A lot of concern in the international community where the situation is heading between Israel and Iran at the moment, and Turkey is no exception. to that situation. We've already had on Friday here in the country a meeting, a high-level security meeting between the Turkish Foreign Minister, the Defence Minister, the head of the military and the head of the intelligence service, meet as it's called here in Turkey. Now we've got these high-level phone calls between the Turkish president and 3 international leaders, the most prominent of which is a telephone conversation with the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, in which he condemned the attacks by Israel and offered his condolences for the deaths of the Iranians in those attacks. Now, in the 3 conversations as a whole, not just with the Iranian president, but also with the Saudi Crown Prince and the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, I think you could say there are several themes running through what he's been saying, particularly according to the readouts that have been published by the Turkish presidency. And I think you could say they run along these lines, that basically Israel is the greatest threat to security in the region at the moment and has to be stopped. And the reason why it's getting away with all this at the moment, he says, is because the international community is turning a blind eye to what it is doing. He's also saying that Israel is blatantly trying to stop the nuclear negotiations that are going on at the moment between the United States and Iran. The next round was due to take place in Oman on Sunday. By carrying out these attacks on the Iranian nuclear facilities, and also saying that the world cannot afford to have a new crisis in this particular part of the world. Of course, all of these 3 leaders as well have a particular interest and are particularly concerned about what is going on in Gaza at the moment as well. More than a year and a half after Israel's attacks have started, now well over 50,000 people have been killed.
And in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, which reconciled with Tehran in 2023, strongly condemned the strikes and said Tel Aviv's attacks violated international laws and norms.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its strong condemnation and denunciation of the blatant Israeli aggressions against the brotherly Islamic Republic of Iran, which undermine its sovereignty and security and constitute a clear violation of international laws and norms.
Meanwhile, Turkey had urged Israel to stop aggressive actions, while Oman, which was hosting U.S. and Iran nuclear talks, called the international community to adopt a clear and firm position to put an end to this dangerous situation. Qatar, a key mediator in the Gaza conflict, also expressed its strong condemnation and denunciation of the Israeli attack. Meanwhile, Russia slammed Israel's strikes on its ally Iran as unacceptable and unprovoked. Moscow's ally China also urged parties to promote stability and avoid further escalation.
The sudden rise in temperature of the regional situation is not in the interests of any party. China calls on all parties concerned to do more things that promote regional peace and stability and avoid further escalation of the tense situation. China is willing to play a constructive role in easing the situation.
India also voiced deep concern, stressing that existing diplomatic channels should be used to de-escalate tensions. And in Europe, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called for calm and a return to diplomacy to stabilize the region. France also urged restraint, while German Chancellor Friedrich Merz called for both parties to avoid further escalation. Australia, New Zealand, and Japan also called for restraint from all parties.
Extremely regrettable that military measures were taken, given ongoing diplomatic efforts toward a peaceful resolution of Iran's nuclear issue. Japan strongly condemns this latest action, which escalates the situation. We urge all parties involved to exercise the utmost restraint and calm the situation.
Hamas said the aggression constituted a dangerous escalation that threatened to destabilize the region. And Yemen's Houthi rebels also condemned the attacks and backed Iran's full right to pursue its nuclear program. So as global condemnation mounts, calls for calm and diplomacy echo across world capitals, a stark reminder of just how fragile peace in the Middle East truly is.
We could hear some distant booms as some of the advanced missile defense systems were engaging these incoming ballistic missiles. But this is an indication that the Iranians have now launched a 5th wave over the past 24 hours, targeting different parts of Israel. We don't know yet how many of these missiles actually landed and hit targets, but we can tell you this is a significant attack for all of them to come at one time. Certainly, we could see from our vantage point more than 15 of them all flying through the skies of Tel Aviv And again, this was in the distance because if you go along the coast from Tel Aviv north along the Mediterranean, you'll get to the port city of Haifa. And it does appear that was the city that was targeted. You saw earlier today those images from the aftermath of a ballistic missile strike in central Israel, completely destroying an entire block in a neighborhood, killing 2 people and injuring dozens of others. These are very significant and powerful missiles that the Iranians are using. And reports right now indicate that the Israelis are striking a variety of different targets in Iran. I'm just reading from my phone here, John, because there are some initial reports coming in from Haifa of at least 1 impact. And again, we have this video showing you what it was like as these missiles were soaring through the skies of Israel. And again, the initial reports, at least 1 impact. But when you watch this video, it appears there could be even more than that. We will, in the minutes and hours ahead, get more information from local authorities and, of course, from the IDF to understand just how extensive this recent barrage was. But what we can report at this hour, Iran has launched a 5th wave of ballistic missiles against Israel, targeting the northern port city of Haifa. People will start to discuss what comes next. And there is a question of if there will be room for diplomacy or if this will just relentlessly continue. There are certainly many here who say the Israelis will continue to go after both Iran's nuclear program and also a variety of senior officials there to ensure that they meet their objectives. And an Israeli source telling Fox News today there are 3 objectives: to weaken Iran's nuclear program, to take out the country's ballistic missile program, and to stop what this source calls an existential threat to Israel's safety and security.
At a very tense time in that part of the world as the missiles continue to rain down, apparently on the port city of Haifa in northern Israel. Trey and our team there will continue to keep an eye on the situation. We will update you.
Those explosions that I presume is part of Israel's air defense system that is now at work. I know you can see the live pictures that are being broadcast from Tel Aviv as I speak to you right now from this bomb shelter that has been set up here at the hotel where we have been working. And so we can hear some of those explosions. There was one that was strong enough to rattle the wall a little bit here, and certainly it's very active.
How many missiles have been fired by the Iranians? But this is Israel's 2nd largest city, a population of 300,000 people, and right now they are headed, and you're seeing an interception right there, up to the sky, Yaniv. Just stay with us. We just need to be calculated here. We're good here, and we are going to. Okay, so right now what we are seeing, Sandra, is Israel's missile defense systems, likely along with American systems, working to intercept incoming ballistic missile fire. This is the attack that the Israeli army warned about. We spoke with officials before we started this live report, and they said they actually had to cut short a statement by Israel's top spokesman because they got some information that this attack was about to be underway. These sirens that you hear off in the distance, again, are used to warn the population to get into shelters. And we're just going to wait and see what information we can gather about this. And we have a statement right now, Sandra, from the IDF, and I'm just going to read it to you in real time. A short while ago, sirens sounded in several areas across Israel following the identification of missiles from Iran toward the state of Israel. The public is asked to follow the instructions of the Home Front Command. At this time, the Israeli Air Force is operating to intercept and strike where necessary to eliminate the threat. It's essential to continue following the instructions of the Home Front Command. And so, again, the Israelis are operating in real time not only to strike the missile launching positions inside of Iran, but also to shoot down any of that fire. And they will use the defense systems on the ground, but also fighter jets if there are any sort of drones that are flying toward Israel to try to distract the air defense systems. But it gives you a sense. Okay, and I'm going to have my cameraman go back to the skyline here, and you're going to see more interceptor rounds coming off over Tel Aviv. The Iranians are targeting major population centers in Israel, again, in response to the operation overnight that took out a number of IRGC officials. And we can see flashes in the skies over Tel Aviv. Just pull out of this shot here a little bit, Yaniv, and I'm just going to talk to my cameraman while we're talking here. So there are some interceptors. Okay, there are interceptors coming in off the sea, and you're going to see some in the distance. skyline, there's a missile and it is headed down. So some of this I can already see, John and Sandra, is not being intercepted. We just saw one of the missiles. Okay, and there's an interception right over Tel Aviv. Pull out here, Yaniv, and you're going to see the trail. Just listen here. Okay, this is some short-range systems. Stay here, Yaniv. Pull out a little bit. Okay, there's just a massive amount of fire coming to Tel Aviv right now. Yaniv, get ready to pull it off the stick. Get off the sticks. All right, let's go. Time to go. Okay. Guys, come on. Everyone move. Everyone move now. Stay with us. Stay with us. Pick up the gear. Let's go.
The Iranian counterattack lit up the skies over Tel Aviv tonight, and not every missile was intercepted from a barrage of drones and incoming missiles. Overnight, Israeli military commanders launched an unprecedented attack. Waves of bombers targeting Iranian nuclear facilities, the nation's ballistic missile stockpiles, and the command and control network. Missile strikes killed Iran's top generals and war planners. The attack was years in the making and executed in secret last night after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel faced an existential threat, that Iran was weeks away from enriching enough uranium to produce nuclear weapons.
President Trump, whether he admits to it or not, has made us a co-belligerent. He's essentially admitted by his actions and some of his words that we were in on this from the very beginning. And this is really disturbing, because from this point forward, I don't think anything we say, anything this government says, is going to be taken seriously by anyone in Moscow or Beijing or Tehran or Ankara or anywhere else. And that's the worst part, because clearly he helped to lull the Iranians into a false sense of security and set them up for this disastrous attack. So that's one thing. So the other thing is that short run, everybody's running around in Israel and declaring victory. Israel's supporters, I should say, their paid agents in the United States are supporting or are, telling everybody how happy they are. But in truth, this looks an awful lot like an Iranian Pearl Harbor to me. And nobody here today remembers, I was born shortly afterwards in 1953, but the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they sank some ships, and then they too celebrated and sailed home. It didn't work out very well for them. And I think the Israelis are in a similar position. The Japanese could have landed and seized those Hawaiian Islands, and then it would have been hell for us to get them back. It would have taken at least 2 years. Who knows what might have happened? Fortunately, they didn't do that. The difference is that Israel cannot consolidate its victory over Iran. But they're assuming that they'll have help from us, that we will jump in with both feet and rescue them. In the meantime, the Iranians are firing all of their older missiles. And by older missiles, I mean old technology. And the old technology is being shot down, which is the goal. They want the Israelis to waste all of their inventory on these old missiles before they start using the really high-end, devastating material. So I think this is just the beginning. The other part of this is that we're now going to see the rest of the world sort of link arms around Iran. Because if you're sitting in Moscow or Beijing or Ankara or anywhere else and you see what's happening to Iran, you say, well, look, if we don't stand by these people, inevitably we'll be next. We'll just be one more dead name on the list like Gaddafi. So I think all in all, this is a catastrophe for Israel. But in the meantime, it looks wonderful for Israel, or at least that's what their supporters and agents in the United States want everybody to think. He would not be in the White House today if it were not for wealthy billionaires that support Israel and support Bibi Netanyahu, who funded his campaign and put him into the White House. I think he knew from the beginning that once he saddled up with the likes of Miriam Adelson and a whole range of others that fall into that category, that he was going to have to do their bidding. Remember, he's been down this road before. In 2019, in June, we came close to doing something very stupid with Iran. And Donald Trump said no. He walked away from it. This was the global hawk that was shot down on the edge of the air defense zone in Iran. Well, he was still a free agent. I don't think he is anymore. I think he's entirely dependent on the lobby. I just think it's a uniparty. We need to come to terms with the reality. We're not represented. I think the first thing we do have to consider very carefully is that whenever you have these kinds of crises, there's almost an immediate alliance overnight between criminality, ideologues, terrorists, and corruption. They all tend to cooperate very effectively. Many years ago, people were shocked to discover that Islamist terrorists were cooperating with members of the IRA in order to achieve their aims. This is back in the 90s. Well, that's what you're going to see happen here in the United States. Remember, we've got probably 30 million people came into the United States under the last administration about whom we know absolutely nothing. We have no idea what they think, where they've come from. We don't even know where most of them are. You've heard Tulsi Gabbard make that statement publicly. And she's also pointed out that we see a lot of evidence in Mexico and in the United States that these groups of people that came in illegally are using tactics reminiscent of what we saw in the Middle East when we had troops on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I think we have to bet that we're going to see trouble. Just look at Los Angeles. Los Angeles has an estimated 1.2 million illegals in it. Now add to that particular fire the drug cartels, Islamist terrorists or Islamist sympathizers, and people who may just be disgruntled. You know, somebody who stands on the sidewalk and you hand him a $50 bill and said, by the way, here's a Molotov cocktail, go around the corner and throw it at the police. This is what we're dealing with at every level. We have nuclear power generation systems. We have power grids all over the country. You know, along with shopping malls, we have military installations in many states that are not really that secure, that are not heavily guarded. Anything is possible, and I see almost no good news on the horizon, and I do worry about the parade tomorrow. And I was in the Army for most of my adult life. I love the Army, and I'm glad that people are recognizing it's 250 years since the Army was first formed. But this does worry the hell out of me because nobody in that parade is interested in harming anyone. They are simply marching as part of the tribute to this 250-year history. But I don't know what's going to happen. What we don't have are big, powerful platforms that are adequately funded. You know, where are the billionaires that actually care about the country? We've got lots of billionaires who are hopelessly devoted to Israel and devoted to this idea that the world is a better place when we're bombing people everywhere. Those people are willing to spend their money to control the narrative and to disseminate what they want. We need people who are simply interested in the truth. You know, we don't have what I would call authority media. You used to be able to turn on the television during the Vietnam War, and when Walter Cronkite came on in 1968, and he said, or 69, after the Tet Offensive, he said, you know, it's time for us to get out of Vietnam. This isn't working. It doesn't make sense. People are dying pointlessly. It's time for the government to find a way out. Well, everybody believed him because he was truthful. We didn't expect him to lie to us about anything, and he didn't. What have we got now? Well, we've got you, Natalie, and we've got a lot of other good people, but we don't have the power behind you. Well, Iran, first of all, has an almost inexhaustible supply of missiles, and they have alternative sources. They can not only build their own missiles, they can get additional components and warheads from other sources, whether those sources are North Korea, China, Russia, as I said before, potentially even Pakistan. And now the Turks are coming online and saying that they support Iran. And I'm sure that there are others. So I think there won't be a shortage of things for the Iranians to fight back with. The real question now is, what do we do? And I think President Trump is already signaling that he'd like to go back to the negotiating table. The problem is that no one believes him. He's destroyed his credibility. I don't think anybody's going to show up to negotiate with him about anything. So I think this is going to go on, and it'll get worse the longer it lasts. And eventually you reach the nuclear threshold. That's what's always worried me, because as the Israelis become more and more desperate and realize just what a terrible position they are in, that's when they threaten the use of a nuclear weapon. Now, the danger, of course, is that by that time, others will have provided nuclear weapons for use against them. In other words, unless there is some sort of miraculous come to Jesus moment in Israel, and I don't think it's going to happen there, this is going to reach a climax, and the climax is not good for Israel. It's going to be disastrous for the Middle East, disastrous for the world. But it may be unavoidable now. You know, the Israelis are operating on a degree of self-congratulation, self-importance, self-love that you can't even begin to imagine. And you just pointed out a good example of where their thinking lies. If they're going to be defeated, then I think their attitude is, we'll pull the plug on everybody and kill everything. And that's a catastrophe too.
And this is very important to understand. Most Europeans cannot grasp this, and they need to get this. There is no strategy. None. The only thing that people want to do in Washington is to hold on to what exists. In other words, they are clinging tenaciously to the status quo, even though everybody privately knows we can't afford it. We can't maintain it. We can't sustain it. You know, it's kind of funny. People talk about $1 trillion defense budget, but at the same time, everybody sees what's happening in Japan and the collapse of the bond market. That's going to happen here. We're at roughly 4.5% on 10-year treasuries. Each month, this goes up a few points. At some point, it's going to rise quickly in a way that we cannot possibly imagine today, but it will, because we no longer have control. You can cut the interest rates, and the yield for treasury bonds goes up anyway, because people don't want to invest in us. We have been selling 2-year treasuries. Even that is now going to become a problem. Nobody wants to buy the 30 years anymore. And now we have the Japanese who've told us, look, we're in a lot of trouble. No hard feelings, but we're going to dump your treasuries. We're going to get rid of them. They're not worth anything. The Chinese are going to do it. And they are the last ones. People don't understand this. Chinese don't want to become the reserve currency. They're very happy to let us do it. They always have been. This is another myth, the evil China that wants to conquer the world and rule Asia. You know, if the Chinese truly wanted to rule Asia, there's an organization, it's called Tokyo. They'd have something to say about it. It's not going to happen. And the Vietnamese would never tolerate it either. And the last time the Chinese challenged the Vietnamese, that was a very unsatisfactory outcome. Look, we're living on Fantasy Island in Washington. Washington, D.C. is Fantasy Island. We can't afford any of it. We've spent ourselves into oblivion. We're headed into a severe recession that could become a depression, particularly if we end up in a war in the Middle East, which we haven't talked about. That would trigger catastrophe over here. We continue to lose control of industries. We just sold the last semblance of national power in the form of United States Steel to Japan. I mean, nobody that I knew when I was living in the 50s and 60s, if I told them the Japanese are going to buy U.S. steel, people would say it's impossible. You've lost your mind. We are in bad shape, Pascal. That's the truth. When the debt to GDP ratio in Great Britain was 240%.
History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The British Empire was forced to scale back when debt made their global reach impossible to maintain. We're not far from that crossroads ourselves, and this time the consequences may be even sharper.
Now remember, if you go back to the 30s and you look at the British General Staff Journal and the discussions that were held with politicians, what was the number one priority for the British? Was it defending France against the Germans? No. It was the empire, and it was India. And in fact, there was tremendous resistance to what Churchill wanted to do because they kept pointing to Stalin and the Soviets and say, that's the real enemy. You know, what are you doing? We're not going to benefit from destroying the Nazi regime if it's replaced by the Soviets. Well, we all know the rest of the story. In the meantime, everything that they insisted they were fighting for, what happened to it? It went away.
For those who've studied the ancient scriptures, particularly the prophetic books of Ezekiel, Daniel, and Revelation, this isn't just another war. It may be a signpost pointing to the end of the age. This is not the first time Israel has warned of striking Iran's nuclear program, but The scope, the precision, the boldness of this attack has shaken the world, or will shake the world, maybe through a worldwide earthquake. It's the kind of event that many believers have anticipated for decades, a trigger that could set in motion the ancient prophecies written thousands of years ago. In the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39, we find one of the most famous and chilling prophecies in the entire Bible. It describes a future invasion of Israel by a coalition of nations led by a mysterious figure called Gog from the land of Magog. Among the nations listed is Persia, or modern-day Iran, and Ezekiel names other players as well: Magog, Meshech, Tubal, which are interpreted as parts of modern Russia or Turkey, which are Iran's allies. Gomer and Beth Togarmah, which some scholars associate with regions of Eastern Europe or Central Asia. But Persia stands out, and not only because of its historical identity as Iran, but because of its current hostility toward the state of Israel. This prophesied invasion is said to take place in the latter days.
This is where we fight! And these shields, boys!
The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.